Okay, guys, we are going to get into this week's midweek breakdown here. We are in Luke 8, Luke 16, and Luke 20 today. And I'm going to remind you, I'm not going over the parables that you guys went over. It was your job to teach them. I'm not reading through them. If you have questions about them, I will answer them, but I'm not actually going to go over it in today's video. So you'll get, I'll kind of skip around, right? I'm going to do Luke 8, verses 1 through 3, and then move on to verse 16 through 26, and then jump over to verse 40. So, like I said, if I've already talked about it, I'm probably going to just read through it, and I'm not going to re-explain it. Watch all the videos, and if you're listening to the messages on Wednesday nights, and if you're coming to the pop-up studies, you'll have all the information that you need. And again, you're able to ask questions anytime that you need to. So we're going to start with chapter 8, verse 1. And soon afterward, he went through cities and villages, proclaiming and bringing the good news of the kingdom of God. And the 12 were with him, and some women who had been healed of evil spirits and infirmities, Mary called Magdalene, from whom 7 demons had gone out, and Joanna, the wife of Chuza, Herod's household manager, and Susanna, and many others who provided for them out of their means. Right, so we just see here a continuous ministry. That's the only thing I really want to point out here is Luke obviously talks about the women in his ministry a little bit more than Matthew or Mark do. But the main thing I want to point out here, we could go into depth about all of that, but what I just really want you to understand is he's still in his ministry at this point, right? So when we go through chapter 7, you see him doing a lot more, like he finished his teaching, and now he's going into like the healing more portion of his ministry in this book specifically, and then he's transitioning back into his parables, going back into this teaching aspect of it. And so what he says here is it's just like a reminder of Jesus's ministry for 3 years did not stop. He was still going to different cities and villages, and he was proclaiming and bringing the good news. And if you get to the end, when we get to the end of Luke, you'll actually see if I wrote down every miracle that he did, there would not be enough space in the world to explain it all. And so this just gives us an example of, okay, so it was a continuous ministry. He wasn't there just like taking a vacation on month 6, week 3 of his ministry. Now we're going to jump down to verse 16 here, and it says, "No one, after lighting a lamp, covers it with a jar and puts it under a bed, but puts it on a stand so that those who enter may see the light. For nothing is hidden that will not be made manifest, nor is anything secret that will not be shown and come to light. Take care of how you hear. For to the one who has, more will be given. To the one who has not, even what he thinks that he has will be taken away." Everything will be revealed to show the light of God, right? Everything's going to come to pass. Stop trying to hide all of these secrets, right? The only thing that should be in secret is your relationship with God. But anything that you hide from people, anything that you try to keep away from everyone will be revealed in the fullness of time. And so everything's like, don't hide things. Don't hide it underneath, but show God through you, right? And we're actually going to get into that a little bit tonight in our message over the transfiguration. But it's that glory of God, right? That light of God should be shown at all times. Then his mother and his brothers came to him, and they could not reach him because of the crowd. And he was told, "Your mother and your brothers are standing outside desiring to see you." But he answered them, my mother and my brothers are those who hear the word of God and do it. Do what God says, and you will be a child of God. One day he got into a boat with his disciples, and he said to them, "Let us go across to the other side of the lake." So they set out. And as they sailed, he fell asleep, and a windstorm came on the lake, and they were filling with water and were in danger. And they went and woke him, saying, "Master, Master, we are perishing." And he awoke and rebuked the wind and the raging waves, and they ceased, and there was a calm. And he said to them, "Where is your faith?" And they were afraid, and they marveled, saying to one another, "Who then is this, that he commands even the winds and the water to obey him?" God is in control. That's the main thing here. God is in control. Now we're going to jump down to verse 40. "Now, when Jesus returned, the crowd welcomed him, for they were all waiting for him. And there came a man named Jairus, who was a ruler of the synagogue, and falling at Jesus' feet, he implored him to come to his house, for he had only one daughter, and about 12 years of age, and she was dying. And Jesus went. The people pressed around him, and there was a woman who had a discharge of blood for 12 years, and thought she had spent all her living on physicians, so she could not be healed by anyone. She came behind him and touched the fringe of his garment, and immediately the discharge of blood ceased. And Jesus said, "Who was it who touched me?" When all denied it, Peter said, "Master, the crowds surround you and are pressing in on you." But Jesus said, "Someone touched me, for I perceive the power has gone out of me." And when the woman saw that she was not hidden, she came trembling and falling down before him, and declared in the presence of all the people why she had touched him, and how she had been immediately healed. And he said to her, "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace." While she was still speaking, someone in the ruler's house came and said, "Your daughter is dead. Do not trouble the teacher anymore." But Jesus, on hearing this, answered, "Do not fear, only believe, and she will be made well." And when he came to the house, he allowed no one to enter except Peter and John and James and the father and the mother of the child. And all were weeping and mourning for her. And he said, "Do not weep, for she is not dead, but sleeping." And they laughed at him, knowing that she was dead. But taking her by the hand, saying, "Child, arise." And her spirit returned. She got up at once, and he directed that something should be given to her to eat. And her parents were amazed, but he charged them to tell no one what had happened. So it's the faith of these two that we actually see highlighted. Don't give up faith, no matter how far gone it seems, right? For the woman with the discharge of blood, she thought in herself, if I just touch him, I will be healed. I know that if I just touch him, I'll be healed. And immediately she was healed by her faith. This daughter was dead. She was dead. And so he came and he said, "Don't worry, just have faith and all will be made well." And it's that idea of don't lose faith even in the worst situations. There is no point where it is too far gone for God to fix it. There is no point in your life where you are too far gone for God to save you. Now we're going to go to chapter 16. Verse 1 through 18. He also said to the disciples, "There was a rich man who had a manager, and charges were brought to him that this man was wasting his possessions. And he called him and said, 'What is this that I hear about you? Turn in the account of your management, for you can no longer be manager.' And the manager said to himself, 'What shall I do? Since my master is taking the management away from me, I am not strong enough to dig, and I am ashamed to beg. I have decided what to do, so that when I am removed from management, people may receive me in their houses.' So, summoning his master's debtors one by one, he said to the first, 'How much do you owe my master?' And he said, 100 measures of oil. And he said, 'Take your bill and sit down quietly and write 50. Then he said to another, 'How much do you owe?' And he said, 100 measures of wheat. And he said, 'Take your bill and write 80. The master commended the dishonest manager for his shrewdness. For the sons of the world are more shrewd in dealing with their own generation than the sons of light. And I tell you, make friends for yourselves by means of unrighteous wealth, so that when it fails, they may receive you into eternal dwellings. One who is faithful in very little is faithful in much, and one who is dishonest in very little is also dishonest in much. If then you have not been faithful in the unrighteous wealth, who will entrust you with true riches? And if you have not been faithful in that which is another's, who will give you that which is your own? No servant can serve two masters, for either he will hate one and love the other, or he will be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and money." The first thing we see here is an example of kind of what's going on in the world right now, where we have instead taken the doctrine that we have been given, the Bible itself, and what we have said is, in order for people to still welcome me, in order for people to still allow me to come into their house, I'm going to water this down a little bit. I'm going to take away the parts that are hard for them to hear. I'm going to take away that little bit that people just disagree with. That way they still love me. That way I'm still accepted in these places, because there's no chance that I'm going to lower myself in the eyes of the world, because I'm too proud to do that. And there's no chance that I'm going to be able to make an honest living while doing it. And so what we see here with this dishonest manager is you have to be faithful in what you have given. You cannot water down the gospel and preach to people and expect it to work. It's not going to work. You cannot do that. You cannot say and take things and say, "Oh, that sin's not too bad. Just keep doing that sin no matter what. No matter how little it seems, like, oh no, it's fine if you do that. God still loves you. Just go ahead and live your life how you see fit. Follow your heart." All of that is not going to work. You cannot do that, is what it's saying here. You cannot your love of money will keep you from God, right? It says that you cannot serve God and money. If you're so focused on money that you lose God, you have a problem. You cannot be like, yes, I'm going to do this for the money that comes out of it, and then still expect to be fully reliant on God. Because what happens when God tells you to do something that turns the money away? You cannot do both. Now we're going to continue, actually. The Pharisees, who were lovers of money, heard all these things, and they ridiculed him. And he said to them, You are those who justify yourselves before men, but God knows your hearts. For what is exalted among men is an abomination in the sight of God. The law and the prophets were until John. Since then, the good news of the kingdom of God is preached, and everyone forces his way into it. But it is easier for heaven and earth to pass away than for one dot of the law to become void. I don't care your justification. God knows what's really in your heart. I don't care what you say to justify your action. God knows what's in your heart. Stop saying you did this for this reason. God knows what's in your heart. You need to live for God fully. You cannot take away the meaning of the word and say that, oh, well, I did this for this reason. Right? A lot of people will use that as an excuse. Like, what happens if stealing is wrong? What happens if a mother needs to steal food for her kid? And they use it as a justification aspect of why stealing isn't always bad. And we can do that with so many things in the gospel. Well, and they'll say things like, if God is love, then why would he hate me doing what I'm doing? Because he loves. He is love. And what we are doing is we're trying to justify our actions when our heart is far from him. Everyone who divorces his wife and marries another commits adultery, and he who marries a woman divorced from her husband commits adultery. Same thing. I don't care how you justify your sin. God knows your heart, and he knows the truth. And what he's saying here is stop lessening the value of my words. He hits it over and over again. Stop lessening the values of my word. Now we're going to go to chapter 20. One day, as Jesus was teaching the people in the temple and preaching the gospel, the chief priests and scribes with the elders came up and said to him, Tell us, by what authority do you do these things? Or who it is that gave you this authority? And he answered, I also will ask you a question. Now tell me, was the baptism of John from heaven or from man? And they discussed it with one another, saying, If we say from heaven, he will say, Why did you not believe him? But if we say from man, all the people will stone us to death, for they are convinced that John was a prophet. So they answered that they did not know where it came from. And Jesus said to them, Neither will I tell you by what authority I do these things. So again, here you see the fear of man just personified completely, because they're like, well, if we say that it was from heaven, Jesus is going to question why we didn't believe him. But if we say it's from man, then they're going to kill us, and we don't want to die, and we don't want to say this. But they didn't believe that John was a prophet. They didn't believe in what he was saying. They were waiting for who they had in their head, but they were too scared of man. They had a fear of man. And he began to tell people this parable. A man planted a vineyard and let it out to tenants and went into another country for a long while. When the time came, he sent a servant to the tenants so that they would give him some of the fruit of the vineyard. But the tenants beat him and sent him away empty-handed. And he sent another servant, but they also beat and treated him shamefully and sent him away empty-handed. And he said yet a third, this one also they wounded and cast out. Then the owner of the vineyard said, What shall I do? I will send my beloved son. Perhaps they will respect him. But when the tenants saw him, they said to themselves, This is the heir. Let us kill him, so that the inheritance may be ours. And they threw him out of the vineyard and killed him. What then will the owner of the vineyard do to them? He will come and destroy those tenants and give the vineyard to others. When they heard this, they said, Surely not. And he looked directly at them and said, What then is this that is written? A stone that the builders rejected has become the cornerstone. Everyone who falls on that stone will be broken to pieces, and when it falls on anyone, it will crush him. This is exactly what they did with the prophets of God. Verse 19, that the scribes and the chief priests sought to lay hands on him at that very hour, for they perceived that he had told this parable against them, but they feared the people. So they watched him and sent spies who pretended to be sincere, that they might catch him in something he said, so as to deliver him up to the authority and jurisdiction of the governor. So they asked him, Teacher, we know that you speak and teach rightly and show no partiality, but truly teach the way of God. Is it lawful for us to give tribute to Caesar or not? But he perceived their craftiness, and he said to them, Show me a denarius. Whose likeness and inscription does it have? They said, Caesar's. He said, Then render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's. And they were not able, in the presence of people, to catch him in what he said, but marveling at his answer, they became silent. Give God what is God's, right? Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. There came to him some Sadducees, those who deny that there is a resurrection. And they asked him a question, saying, "Teacher, Moses wrote for us that if a man's brother dies, having a wife but no children, the man must take the widow and raise up offspring for his brother. Now there were 7 brothers. The first took a wife and died without children. The second and the third took her, and likewise all 7 left no children and died. Afterward, the woman also died. In the resurrection, therefore, whose wife will the woman be? For the 7 had her as a wife." And Jesus said to them, "The sons of this age marry and are given in marriage, but those who are considered worthy to attain to that age and to the resurrection from the dead neither marry or are given in marriage, for they cannot die anymore, because they are equal to angels and are sons of God, being sons of the resurrection. But that the dead are raised, even Moses showed in the passage about the bush, where he calls the Lord the God of Abraham, and the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. Now he is not a God of the dead, but of the living, for all live to him." Then some of the scribes answered, "Teacher, you have spoken well," for they no longer dared to ask him a question. Right? So we see here God is the God of the living here. He first tells them, right, there's no marriage in the resurrection, and then he goes on to say, "I'm a God of the living. I'm not worried about the dead," because the Sadducees didn't believe in resurrection anyway. So they were trying to find a way to twist the words to make him say something that they wanted to hear. But he said to them, "How can they say that Christ is David's son? For David himself says in the book of Psalms, 'The Lord said to my Lord, sit at my right hand until I make your enemy your footstools.' David thus called him Lord, so how is he son?" So he's proving his power and his sonship right here. He's basically saying, "I am the Son of God." And in the hearing of all the people, he said to the disciples, "Beware of the scribes who are like to walk around in long robes and love greetings in the marketplace and the best seats in the synagogues and the places of honor at feast, who devour widows' houses and for a pretense make long prayers. They will receive the greater condemnation." Don't fall for their traps, right? Beware of what they are doing. Don't allow their lives to be an example for yours. So that is all for this week's midweek breakdown. Read it yourself, ask questions, try to understand it a little bit more, and let me know if you want me to go over something in a little bit more detail. I will see you guys next time.